I want you to picture something for a second. You're standing in a massive, cavernous library.
Okay.
We're talking old-school dust motes dancing in the light floor-to-ceiling shelves, the smell of old paper and leather. And on one of these shelves, there is a book that is enormous.
A real doorstop.
It's a doorstop. It's the kind of book that if you dropped it on your foot, you'd be in a cast for 6 weeks.
You are describing the Institutes of the Christian Religion, aren't you?
I am. It is the magnum opus of the Reformation. It's dense, it's theological, and frankly, it's intimidating.
Very intimidating.
But right next to that massive tome, there's something else. There's a tiny, slim volume, maybe 50 pages. It looks like something you could slip into a jacket pocket.
Something you could actually read on a short flight.
Exactly. And yet, arguably, that little book has had just as much impact on history as the big one.
I'd say that's a fair argument.
That is the subject of today's deep dive. We are looking at a text often called the Golden Booklet of the True Christian Life. And the author is a man who, I think it's fair to say, has a bit of a PR problem in the modern world.
Oh, for sure.
We are talking about John Calvin.
He certainly does have a reputation. When you say Calvin to the average person on the street, if they know the name at all, they usually think of one thing.
Predestination.
Predestination. Or maybe they picture a very stern, joyless man in a black robe who, hates fun.
The guy who canceled Christmas, essentially.
Exactly. There is this caricature of Calvinism as this grim, stoic, frozen-faced theology.
Right.
But the fascinating thing about this golden booklet, which we should clarify wasn't written as a standalone book originally, is that it completely complicates that picture.
Okay, so let's establish the context before we dive in. Where did this text actually come from?
So go back to that massive book you mentioned, The Institutes.
The doorstop.
The doorstop. It's a cathedral of theology. It covers everything. The nature of God, the law, the church, the sacraments, all of it.
The high-level stuff.
The highest level. But buried deep inside that massive structure, specifically in Book 3, chapters 6 through 10, Calvin shifts gears. He stops talking about high-level doctrine and starts talking about the day-to-day grind.
Ah, so it's the practical application section.
Exactly. Editors later realized that these specific chapters were so potent and so practical that they extracted them. They pulled them out and published them as a standalone guide.
And it took off.
It's been a bestseller for 400 years. It's been in the pockets of soldiers, on the nightstands of farmers, and in the libraries of scholars. It just resonated.
And our mission today is to figure out why. We aren't just here to summarize a 400-year-old book. We want to answer a specific question that came up in our research, which is really the heart of it. How does this little manual, written by a guy famous for being stern, actually inspire people to love Christ more deeply and live fully?
It's a great question because it forces us to look past the stereotype. And to your point, the answer is surprising.
I have to admit, when I started reading the source material for this, I was ready for a list of rules. I expected. Don't dance, don't drink, sit still, look miserable.
A rule book for the joyless.
Exactly. But that's not what we found.
Not even close. It was almost the opposite in some ways.
We found stuff about flowers. We found stuff about wine. We found a theology that talks about beauty and nature and even enjoying things like gold and fine cloth. It was disorienting.
It creates a tension, right? You have the reputation of the frozen theologian, but the text itself is incredibly warm and, I'd say, human.
So let's categorize this properly. If I'm a listener and I pick up this book, what am I holding? Is this like a mystical guide? Is it like those medieval texts that teach you how to ascend a ladder to heaven or something?
That's a really important distinction to make early on. No, it is not mysticism. Calvin isn't interested in helping you have an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
He isn't trying to get you to merge your soul with the infinite or, lose yourself in a cloud of unknowing. It's very grounded.
Okay, so it's not mysticism. Is it monastic? Is it a rule book for monks? Go to the desert, eat locusts, that sort of thing.
Also, no. And Calvin would be quite offended if you suggested it was. He was very against the whole monastic idea of fleeing the world to find God.
So what is it then?
It's a pastoral distillation.
Pastoral distillation. Unpack that for us.
It means it's written for real people living real lives. It's for the cobbler, the merchant, the mother, the magistrate. It's a manual for reality. Calvin argues that the Christian life is cruciform.
Shaped like the cross.
Shaped like the cross, and eschatological.
Which means focused on the future, on the end times.
Exactly. So it's a life shaped by sacrifice now, in light of a glorious future.
That brings us to a concept in the notes that seems to be the engine driving this whole book. It's called the double movement.
It is the heartbeat of the Reformation. To understand this book, you have to understand where it sits in the whole theological system.
Yeah. Okay.
You have the first movement, justification.
Which is the legal standing, the courtroom moment.
Right. That's the courtroom. You are guilty, but the judge declares you innocent because of Christ. That is entirely God's work. You don't contribute to it.
Yeah.
You are accepted, period. End of story on that front.
But that's not the end of the whole story.
Not at all. Because then comes the second movement, sanctification.
And that's what this book is about.
Yes. Justification is you are saved. Sanctification is now what? It's the process of becoming holy. It's the process of your life actually beginning to look like the life of Jesus.
So it's the follow-through.
It's the follow-through. And Calvin's argument is that you cannot have one without the other. You can't say, I'm saved so I can do whatever I want. He would call that a monstrous idea.
So this is the manual for the now what?
Correct. And to kick off that manual, Calvin drops a phrase that honestly is like a nuclear bomb to the modern ego. It is the Copernican shift of his entire worldview.
We are diving into the core of segment 1 here. The phrase is short. In Latin, it's non nostri sumus.
We are not our own.
I want to just pause on that. We are not our own. In the modern world, in the West specifically, I feel like our entire culture is built on the exact opposite premise.
Absolutely, 100%.
Everything from our advertising to our education system to our, self-help books, it all screams, you belong to yourself, you are the captain, you are the master.
It's the narrative of autonomy, audomos, self-law. I am a law unto myself. I invent my own meaning. I define my own reality.
And Calvin just comes in and says, no.
He says it's a delusion. And he's not just being poetic. He uses very specific legal language here. In the Roman world, and really in any legal system, ownership dictates usage.
Right. If you own it, you decide what to do with it.
If I own a plot of land, I decide if we're planting corn or building a parking lot. If I own a tool, I decide how it's used. Calvin is saying, you do not hold the title deed to your own life. You have been bought.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Please.
To a modern listener, and honestly, to me at first glance, that sounds incredibly oppressive. It sounds like slavery. I don't own myself. I'm just property. How is that not a recipe for a psychological abuse?
That is the natural reaction. I think it's the only reaction you can have if you're steeped in our culture. If you view God as a tyrant, then yes, being owned by him is terrifying.
Of course.
But Calvin flips the script. He argues that this transfer of ownership is actually the only way to find relief.
Relief? How is losing my autonomy a relief? That sounds like a contradiction.
Well, think about the burden of modern autonomy. If you are truly your own, then you are the sole architect of your destiny. You are responsible for your own ultimate meaning. You are responsible for your own happiness.
Right. The pressure's all on me.
The pressure is entirely on you. If you fail, if you aren't self-actualized by the time you're 40, if you don't achieve your dreams, who is to blame?
Only me.
Exactly. It is a crushing weight. And we see this anxiety all over the modern world. People are exhausted from trying to invent themselves, from trying to build their own brand, from being the CEO of their own life.
So what's Calvin's alternative?
Calvin says, if you are not your own, you resign as the CEO of the universe. You are not the master of your fate. You are a servant.
So the pressure is off.
The pressure of outcome is off. If you are God's, then his will rules your actions, but his providence rules your outcome. Your job is just to be faithful in the role you've been given. You don't have to be successful in the eyes of the world. You don't have to make it. You just have to serve.
It completely changes the question you ask when you wake up in the morning.
How so?
Instead of asking, what do I feel like doing? Or what will make me happy? Or how can I get ahead? You ask, what does the owner want done today?
Precisely. And Calvin says this shift, this fundamental realization that we are not our own, is the only cure for the root of all our misery.
Which he identifies as self-love.
Right. But not in the, modern self-care sense.
Not love yourself, bubble bath kind of self-love.
No, he means a malignant, narcissistic self-obsession. He calls it a blindness. He says we are all naturally obsessed with ourselves. We rush towards self-love like water rushing downhill. It's our default setting.
He has this vivid image in the text. He says we construct a kingdom within our own breast.
That is a haunting phrase, isn't it? A kingdom within our own breast. It means that inside every one of us, there is a little tyrant sitting on a throne me. We want the world to revolve around our comfort, our reputation, our opinions.
And this distorts reality. It's like wearing glasses with the wrong prescription.
Completely. Calvin points out that this self-love destroys our ability to judge clearly. It makes us terrible referees of our own lives. He notes how we hide our own vices.
Oh,
We
yeah.
bundle them up, bury them in the cellar, and pretend they don't exist. We call our greed prudence or our anger righteous indignation. But when we look at other people,
We get out the microscope.
we become detectives. We spot the tiniest flaw in our neighbor while ignoring the massive flaws in ourselves. Calvin says self-love makes us gentle and indulgent with ourselves and ferocious and hypercritical with others.
Okay, so the remedy is this: we are not our own concept. But how do we actually do that? It's easy to say, okay, God owns me, but then I walk into traffic or someone cuts me off or I get a bad review at work and suddenly the kingdom of me is back in charge.
Right, the tyrant is back on the throne in a split second.
So how does this become real?
Calvin appeals to Romans 12 here. Transformation. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
And what does that renewal look like practically? It's not just like thinking happy thoughts.
No, it's not positive thinking. It's not just learning new theology either. It's stopping the pattern of thinking like the world. The world thinks, how do I maximize my gain, my comfort, my reputation? The renewed mind thinks, how do I maximize God's glory? How do I serve the owner? It's a total rewiring of the operating system.
Which I guess leads us directly into the next major theme of the booklet: self-denial.
The first practical outworking of, we are not our own.
Now, again, I want to pause on the language. Self-denial is a buzzword right now, but usually in a very different context than what Calvin means.
How do you mean?
Well, I see self-denial in the productivity hacking space or the health space. Deny yourself carbs so you can have abs. Deny yourself clutter so you can have a clean house. It's minimalism.
Yeah.
Is Calvin the original Marie Kondo?
That's a great comparison. But no, the distinction is crucial.
Okay.
Modern minimalism or biohacking self-denial is still fundamentally about you. It's about your optimization. You are denying a small pleasure now to get a bigger pleasure later. You clear the clutter so you can feel peaceful.
So it's still self-centered. It's just a more strategic self-centeredness.
It is entirely
Our
self-centered. Calvin's self-denial is theocentric, God-centered. You aren't emptying yourself just to have a clean, empty space. You're emptying yourself to make room for God and for your neighbor.
It's displacement.
That's the perfect word. You push self off the throne to put God on it and to serve the person standing next to you.
Let's talk about that neighbor aspect, because this is where the rubber meets the road. It's one thing to say, I submit to God. God is perfect. God is majestic. It's, relatively easy to submit to perfection in theory.
In theory, yes.
It is much harder to submit to Bob in accounting who steals my lunch, or the neighbor whose dog barks all night, or the politician I can't stand.
Calvin knows this.
Yeah.
And his ethic here is incredibly radical, even for today. He says we must do good to all, even the unworthy.
The unworthy, that's a strong term. He's not pulling any punches.
He's being realistic. He says, look, if you base your kindness on whether people deserve it, you will stop being kind very quickly.
Because most people, most of the time, don't really deserve it.
Right. People are often ungrateful, rude, arrogant, and annoying. If your service depends on their worthiness, you'll burn out in a week.
So if they don't deserve it, why do I serve them? Why do I deny myself for them? What's the motivation?
This is the genius of it. Calvin introduces the image of God argument. He says you have to learn to look past the person's behavior, the surface layer of dirt and grime, and see the imago Dei, the image of God, stamped on them.
So you're not responding to them, you're responding to the image they carry.
Exactly. He says, when you look at a human being, any human being, even your enemy, you are seeing a reflection of the God you claim to love. He writes, and I'm paraphrasing, even if they have provoked you or deserve nothing, God deserves your service to them.
That is a complete paradigm shift. You aren't doing it for them. You're doing it for God through them.
Exactly. It creates a buffer. It protects you from bitterness. If I'm serving you because I want you to appreciate me and you don't, I get bitter and resentful.
Right. After all I've done for you.
But if I'm serving you because I love God and you are his image bearer, then your reaction doesn't determine my action. My stewardship determines my action.
He talks about stewardship of gifts too, right?
Yes. This is huge for him. He says, whatever you have, money, intelligence, patience, a particular skill, a bit of free time, you don't own it. You are a steward. God gave those things to you for the benefit of others.
So if I withhold my help from someone because I think they're unworthy,
You are essentially embezzling from God. You're a manager who is hoarding the company's resources for yourself.
Wow, that's tough. That is really tough.
It connects back to that passage in Titus 2 that Calvin loves, the pedagogical grace.
Pedagogical meaning teaching.
Yes. He argues that grace doesn't just save us, it educates us. It's like a tutor that moves into your house. It says, okay, you're saved, now put down the pride, pick up the towel, serve that person. No, not that person you like, that person you can't stand.
But Calvin isn't naive. He acknowledges that there is something inside us that fights this tooth and nail. He calls it the titan within.
The internal giant. That's the natural man. We all want to be philosopher kings. We want to be governed by our own reason, our logic.
And what does our logic say?
Logic says, this person hurt me, therefore I should hurt them back. Or at the very least, I should ignore them and protect myself. It's a cost-benefit analysis.
And Calvin's response?
Calvin says, your reason must yield to the Holy Spirit. You have to submit your logic to God's logic, which looks like foolishness to the world.
So we have this concept of self-denial, which is largely voluntary. It's the choices we make to put God and others first. But then the booklet shifts. It goes into darker territory. Segment 3, bearing the cross.
This is a crucial pivot in the text. Absolutely crucial.
Help us distinguish this. What is the difference between denying yourself and bearing a cross? Aren't they basically the same thing? They both sound painful.
They are related, but they are distinct,
Mm-hmm.
and the distinction is important. Self-denial is active. It's what you choose to give up. It's the I will not or I will.
I will serve my annoying neighbor.
Right. Bearing the cross is passive. It's what is laid upon you. It's what happens to you.
So self-denial is giving money to the poor. Bearing the cross is losing your job.
Exactly. Sickness, betrayal by a friend, poverty, the death of a loved one, the things you didn't vote for. Calvin says that while self-denial is an act of obedience, bearing the cross is a passive obedience. It's how we respond to the suffering God allows into our lives.
And he uses an analogy here that I have to be honest, I struggled with at first. It felt a bit harsh. The unruly horse.
Ah, yes, the horse. It's a very classic Calvin image, very pre-industrial.
Walk us through it. Why does he compare us to a horse?
He says, imagine a spirited horse, a thoroughbred.
Yeah.
If you leave that horse idle in the pasture, feed it the best oats every day, and never work it, never ride it, what happens?
It gets wild, it gets fat and dangerous, unmanageable.
It becomes untamable. It bites the rider. It kicks. Calvin argues that our flesh, our sinful nature, is exactly like that horse. If everything goes our way, if we have perfect health, perfect wealth, and zero pushback from the world, we don't just become happy. We become arrogant.
We start to believe our own hype.
We start to rely on ourselves. We kick against God. We think we don't need him.
So the cross, the suffering, is the training, the bridle and the saddle.
It's the taming. And this is where the nuance is vital. Calvin isn't saying God beats the horse because he hates it. He's saying God trains the horse because he wants it to be useful, to be strong in the right way. It's the pedagogical cross again. God uses suffering to teach us our own weakness.
Because if we don't feel our weakness, we live in an illusion of strength.
Exactly. We start to believe the self-made man myth. Suffering shatters that myth. It forces us to our knees. It reveals that we are fragile, and that forces us to lean on God, not on our own resources.
Now, in the notes, there is a really interesting comparison here between Martin Luther and John Calvin. They were contemporaries, giants of the Reformation, but they seem to handle this topic of suffering slightly differently.
It's a fascinating theological nuance, yeah. They're looking at the same mountain from slightly different angles.
So what's Luther's angle?
If you read Luther, generally speaking, he focuses heavily on justification. For Luther, the cross proves you can't save yourself. The cross crushes your efforts, your pride, your self-righteousness, until you scream out for Christ to rescue you. It's all about relief. I can't do it. You did it for me.
Yeah. And Calvin, he obviously believes that, but his emphasis is different.
Calvin agrees with that 100%. But in this booklet, which is focused on the Christian life, Calvin is looking at sanctification.
Then now what?
The now what? For him, the cross is fatherly discipline. It's not just showing you that you can't save yourself. It's actively training you to be a son or daughter. It's structure. It's character formation.
So, to use an analogy, Luther says the cross drives you to the emergency room. And Calvin says yes, and then the cross drives you to the gym for physical therapy.
That is a very good way to put it. For Calvin, suffering is corrective discipline. He emphasizes over and over that God is a father.
Not a judge.
Not a judge in this context. If a father sees his child playing in traffic, he might grab them roughly by the arm and pull them back. It hurts. The child might cry, but it's an act of love. Calvin wants us to see every tragedy through that lens. This is not a judge destroying a criminal. This is a father training a child he loves.
But does that mean we have to enjoy it? This is where I get stuck. If I get a cancer diagnosis or my house burns down, am I supposed to just smile and say, thank you, Father, for this lovely lesson? That feels inhuman. It feels fake.
And Calvin would agree with you completely. He is very, very clear here. He is not a Stoic.
Thank goodness, because that's the caricature, right? The stiff upper lip.
The caricature, but it's wrong. He explicitly attacks what he calls the iron philosophy of the Stoics. The Stoics believed the goal of life was apatheia, feeling nothing, being unshakable like a rock.
And Calvin says no.
Calvin points to Jesus. Jesus wept. Jesus groaned in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was called a man of sorrows. Calvin says Christians are allowed to groan. We are allowed to cry. We are allowed to feel the full weight of the burden.
So what distinguishes a Christian crying from just anyone else crying? What's the difference?
Patience. For Calvin, patience isn't the absence of pain. It's not gritting your teeth and pretending it doesn't hurt. It's submitting to the will of God through the tears.
Okay.
You might be weeping, you might be crying out to God in anguish, but underneath the weeping, there is a bedrock belief that says, Lord, this hurts, I hate this, but I know you are good, and I submit to your hand.
It's a surrendered heart, not a numb heart.
Exactly. It validates the emotional reality of the pain while giving it a theological meaning.
Okay.
You aren't suffering randomly. You are being shaped by a father's hand.
Okay, so we are bearing the cross. We are being trained, but trained for what? Where is this all leading? This takes us to segment 4, the future life.
This is the destination. You can't understand the journey if you don't know where you're going. All the self-denial and cross-bearing is pointless without this piece.
Calvin uses a metaphor here that I found really helpful. He compares our life on earth to staying in a hotel.
Yes, or an inn. He says we need to view earth as a place of exile and heaven as our homeland. We are guests in a hotel, not owners of the mansion.
Which implies you shouldn't start knocking down walls and remodeling the hotel room. You're just passing through. You're checking out soon.
Exactly. And this brings us to his meditation on the future life. Calvin argues, and this is so counterintuitive to our way of thinking, that you cannot truly live for Christ here unless you are ready to leave.
Why? Why does thinking about dying help me live better now? That sounds morbid.
Because it stabilizes you. It gives you perspective. Think about the hotel metaphor again. If you think this hotel room is your forever home, if you think this life is all there is, then every little problem is a huge deal.
Right.
Every crack in the wallpaper is a tragedy. If the room service is late, it's a disaster. If you lose your money or your status or your health, it destroys you because you have nothing else.
You've put all your eggs in a basket that has a hole in it.
Right. But if you know it's just a hotel, if you know your real mansion is waiting for you in the homeland, then poverty, disgrace, or sickness are just travel inconveniences.
Annoying, but not ultimate.
They're annoying, sure. They might be deeply painful, but they don't ruin you. They can't take your real home away from you.
It prevents what he calls intemperate love for the world.
Intemperate love. That's the key phrase. If you love the journey too much, you forget the destination. You start building your kingdom here in the hotel lobby.
But this creates a tension, and the sources call it a paradox. Calvin talks about despising the world.
He does. And that language is jarring to modern ears. It sounds very negative.
It sounds like Gnosticism, almost. It sounds like we should hate matter, hate our bodies, hate trees and puppies and sunsets. Is that what he means?
No, and this is where people really get Calvin wrong. He means despising in a comparative sense. It's all about relative value.
Okay, explain that.
Compared to the glory of being with Christ, this world is a shadow. We should long for heaven so much that earth seems dull by comparison.
Like looking at a candle when the sun is shining.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You don't hate the candle. The candle's nice. It gives light. But you don't really need it when the sun is blazing. Its light pales in comparison.
But we shouldn't be ungrateful for the candle while we have it. We don't stomp it out just because the sun exists.
Correct. And that is the pivot to segment 5. Because right after telling us to meditate on heaven and treat earth like a hotel, Calvin turns around and sounds like a total foodie.
He really does. This was the biggest surprise for me in the entire text. Segment 5 is about enjoying the present. I was not expecting this at all.
Chapter 5 of the booklet. It's called The Proper Use of the Present Life.
I honestly thought he was going to say bread and water only. Maybe some gruel if it's a feast day.
Far from it. This is where he directly counters that joyless caricature. Calvin makes a theological argument from creation.
What's the argument?
He says, look at what God made. Just look around. Did God just give us food for nutrition? Did he just create nutrient paste to keep our biological systems running?
No. He made strawberries and steak and wine and chocolate.
He made flavor. He made texture. He made aroma. Calvin asks, why do flowers smell good? They don't need to smell good for us to survive. Why does gold glitter? Why is ivory beautiful? Why are sunsets colorful?
And his answer?
Because God is a generous, joyful Father who wants his children to enjoy the beauty of his work. He's not a stingy minimalist. He quotes Psalm 104.15, wine that gladdens the heart of man. Calvin argues that rejecting these gifts is actually a form of pride.
Pride. That seems backwards. I would have thought rejecting them was humble. Look at me, I'm so holy, I don't need wine.
No, because it's ingratitude. Imagine you cook a 5-course meal for a friend, you spend all day on it, you buy the best ingredients, you set the table beautifully, and they come over, sit at your table, and eat a dry cracker from their pocket because they want to show you how spiritual they are.
I'd be offended. I'd be furious.
Exactly. You say, I made this for you. Enjoy it. The enjoyment is part of the gift. Calvin says extreme asceticism, punishing yourself, rejecting all pleasure, is actually insulting to the Creator.
Yeah.
It's slapping the Father's hand away.
There has to be a line, right? There must be. Because earlier we talked about self-denial, now we're talking about enjoying wine and gold. How do you balance deny yourself with enjoy the wine?
That is the million-dollar question. That is the razor's edge of the Christian life that we all have to walk. And Calvin gives us the rule of moderation.
Okay, what are the guardrails? How do we know when we've crossed the line from enjoyment to indulgence?
First, he references 1 Corinthians 7. Use the world, but don't abuse it. Or a more literal translation, use it as if you were not using it. I mean, you hold it loosely.
Okay.
You enjoy the flower, but you don't worship the flower. You drink the wine,
Yeah.
but you don't need the wine to be happy. Your joy isn't dependent on it.
Okay, so a certain detachment even in the midst of enjoyment.
Second, the stewardship test. This is very practical. Calvin says you must be able to give an account of your enjoyment to God.
What does that mean?
It means if your feasting makes you unfit for duty, if you drink so much wine you can't pray, or eat so much you can't serve your neighbor, or spend so much money on yourself you can't be generous, then it's wrong.
So enjoyment is for the purpose of refreshing us for service, not distracting us from it.
Yes, it's pit stop fuel, not the destination. If the pit stop takes longer than the race, you've lost the plot.
And there was a third guardrail mentioned in the notes, vocation.
Yes, calling. Calvin is huge on this. He says God has assigned every person a post, like a sentry in the army. You might be a shoemaker, a magistrate, a parent, a farmer. That is your station. You stay in your calling.
Stay in your lane.
Essentially. And you enjoy the fruits of that labor. You don't covet someone else's life, someone else's portion. If God gives you a simple meal, enjoy the simple meal with gratitude. If he gives you a banquet, enjoy the banquet with gratitude. But don't abandon your post to chase the banquet.
It's a moderated world affirmation. We don't withdraw from the world like monks, but we don't dive into it like hedonists. We walk the middle path.
We are pilgrims. Pilgrims enjoy a good meal at the inn, but they don't sleep in. They get up, they put their boots back on, and they keep walking toward the homeland.
I love that image. So we've covered self-denial, suffering, the future life, and enjoying the present. It feels like a complete system for living.
It is a totally integrated worldview.
Let's try to synthesize this. In segment 6, the notes compare Calvin to another heavy hitter of the faith, John Owen. I love these comparisons because they help highlight the unique flavor of the author.
John Owen, the great Puritan. A theological genius in his own right, but with a very different style.
The comparison given is the architect versus the surgeon. Unpack that.
Okay, so if you read John Owen, specifically his famous work on the mortification of sin, he is surgical. He gets in there with a scalpel. He helps you identify specific sins, specific lusts, and he tells you exactly how to kill them. It's very detailed, very internal. How do I kill my pride? Here are 7 steps. How do I kill my lust? Here's the anatomy of it.
He's the specialist.
He's the surgeon. And Calvin. In this booklet, he's the architect. He isn't necessarily telling you how to fight one specific sin. He's building a structure. He's giving you a worldview. He's saying, here is the floor. You are not your own. Here are the walls. Bearing the cross. Here is the roof, the hope of heaven.
So Owen helps you fight the specific battle. Calvin helps you understand the whole war.
That's a great way to put it. And Calvin's argument implicitly is that if you get the structure right, if you truly believe you belong to God and that heaven is your home, The specific sins lose their power. They lose their appeal.
Why? How does believing I'm not my own help me stop sinning? Let's connect those dots.
Well, think about the root of most sin. It's usually self-love or fear. Why do I lie? To protect my reputation. Self-love. Why am I greedy? Because I'm afraid of not having enough. Fear or lack of trust. Why am I envious? Because I want what someone else has for myself. Self-love.
Okay, that makes sense.
If I truly know God owns me, I don't have to protect myself anymore. He protects me. If I know heaven is my guaranteed inheritance, I don't have to be greedy for things here. I'm already infinitely rich.
Yeah.
The whole motivation for the sin starts to crumble.
It clears the clutter so we are free to love Christ. Which gets us back to our main question.
That's the mission we started with. How does this inspire love for Christ? By removing the barrier of self. When my heart is full of myself, I have no room for Christ. When I deny myself, I'm not just empty. I'm making room to be filled with Him.
And seeing suffering as fatherly means I can trust His heart even when His hand is heavy.
That's the key to loving Him in the hard times. If you think suffering is just random bad luck, or worse, God punishing you because He hates you, you can't love Him. You'll resent Him. You'll be terrified of Him. But if it's a father training you for glory, you can love Him through the pain.
So let's wrap this up. We've been on a journey through the Golden Booklet, a small book with a massive punch.
Indeed.
We started with the foundation, the core principle. We are not our own.
Then we move to the outworking of that, self-denial, clearing a throne of our hearts to serve God and neighbor.
Then bearing the cross, accepting the involuntary suffering of life as training from a loving Father.
Then meditating on the future life, keeping our eyes on the horizon, on the homeland, so we don't get crushed by the bumps in the road.
And finally, which was the big surprise, enjoying the present, using God's good gifts of wine and flowers as fuel for our pilgrimage with gratitude and moderation.
It's a complete ecosystem of the Christian life. Every part connects to the others.
You know, at the beginning, we asked what the final aha moment is. And for me, looking at all this, the cross, the self-denial, the ownership, it seems like the big reveal is actually about liberty. Freedom.
Go on. That's interesting.
Well, we usually think of rules and self-denial and being owned as restrictive. We think freedom is doing whatever we want, whenever we want. But Calvin portrays this surrender as the only way to true freedom. By giving up ownership of ourselves, we lose the crushing anxiety of trying to run the universe.
That is absolutely it. The modern world thinks freedom is the absence of constraints. I do what I want.
Yeah.
Calvin says that's actually slavery. It's slavery to your own appetites, your own fears, your own anxieties.
Right.
True freedom is being owned by a good and wise master. It's the freedom of the passenger who trusts the pilot versus the terror of the passenger trying to fly the 747 with no training.
I like that. I am more than happy to be the passenger.
It allows you to relax into the journey.
And there's this provocative thought to leave us with. It ties the end of life and the enjoyment of life together. The death and the wine.
Yes. Calvin suggests, and this is the beautiful paradox, that the person who is most ready to die is actually the one most free to enjoy a glass of wine and the beauty of a flower today.
Why? How does that work?
Because they know who owns it all, and they know where they are going. If you are terrified of death, you hold on to the wine glass too tight. You try to squeeze every drop of pleasure out of this life because you think this is it. This is your only chance at happiness.
So you become desperate.
But if you are ready to go home to the Father, you can hold the glass loosely. You can sip it, smile, say, "Thank you, Lord," and set it down without anxiety. You are free from the tyranny of having to make this world your heaven.
That is a beautiful place to land. For everyone listening, whether you're in a season of feasting or a season of bearing the cross, maybe this gives a new perspective. View your daily frustrations as training and your daily joys as, what was it? Interest-free loans from a generous Father.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.